Hello and welcome to another episode of OutZoo. Today my good friend Bruce Campbell is with me and he's going to answer a question for me that I always ponder. When should I go with cloud and when should I go without cloud? Welcome to the zoo, Bruce.
Hi, Alf. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You have, over the last few months specifically, been very instrumental in looking at the entire Remedy suite, both what's on-premise and what's in the cloud.
Right.
But beyond that, you know, and doing that, you've talked to customers, you talk to analysts, you talk to people in our own company, and beyond our own suite, just in general, what are the findings you find? Should I go with everything in the cloud, like Benioff is saying, or should I have everything on the ground because you can't trust vendors? Or is the answer somewhere in between?
Well, it's a good question, and the question that we pose to our customers all the time, and it's interesting because they actually come back and say, well, what do you recommend?
Yeah.
And so we find ourselves in a position a lot with being one of the vendors out there that have a pretty potent enterprise ITSM solution, both on premise and on demand, to be able to help them through this quandary. And even as recent as 3 or 4 years ago, customers were still really having a problem with the concept of putting such a mission critical application suite like their IT service management in the cloud from 3 different reasons. They're worried about security, they're worried about reliability, and they're worried about manageability. And we help them go through the process of determining, well, of those 3, what are your main objections to them? And then we kind of talk to them in terms of let's take a look at what's going on in the marketplace right now, and let's take a look at what's going on with our SaaS platform that we've invested so much in and have worked on so hard over the last several years, and see if we can put their minds at ease. And we've had pretty good success at being able to help them down the path and decide whether or not, number one, SaaS is right for them as a company. There's certain DNA traits and markers about the way a company works, the way they operate, the way their mindset is, that sometimes SaaS just isn't. They're just not ready for a SaaS-based model, regardless of whether it's ITSM or any type of product. And so we try to help them make those calls, and then we also use industry analysts and other customers that have had similar questions in the past to be able to help them answer questions about data residency, or whether or not the data centers that BMC uses are secure enough and are reliable enough, and ultimately how the workflows work when they want to make a change and BMC is running the operations in the data center, how that whole thing works back and forth, and are they really giving up all kinds of control by going on demand versus on premise, those types of things. So we're pretty active in these dialogues with our customers.
So it's very much case to case. Have you seen any patterns such as mid-sized companies are more open to cloud versus larger enterprises and so on?
I don't think it's so much a function of size as it is a function of vertical. If there are government agencies or there are state agencies or areas that are very highly regulated and have very potent compliancy requirements, a lot of times they have data residency issues. They feel a lot more comfortable with their data closer to home and inside their own firewall. So it's just about trying to make sure that we understand exactly what kinds of data they're really sensitive about, and to possibly provide use cases or situations in which other customers that have had the same worries went through, and maybe hook those 2 up to be able to talk about some of the processes they went through, just to determine whether or not this is something that they can live with or not. And of course that all depends on whether or not SaaS is a good fit for them in the first place.
Well, that's it, right? There seems to be that everybody wants to do it, whether it's a good fit or not. What if I want to do a little bit of each? I can't take all my data and put it up in the sky because they're all sensitive issues, so I'm just not ready for it, as you said. What options do I have for that?
Sure. Well, we have several customers who are kind of running what we call a hybrid IT environment that that have certain elements in their IT department being managed on premise because it's just a lot easier. You know, their discovery, the agents that run on the endpoints that need to give, you know, fully loaded data. It's just a lot easier to have that kind of stuff local. A lot of the monitoring tools that need real-time data that come in, while there are some cloud options out there for that, a lot of times they prefer to have those types of tools on premise. But a lot of companies are kind of heading toward this concept of IT as a service, having absolutely everything, you know, hosted by somebody else and operated and managed by someone else, and they pay for exactly what they need on a subscription model. And that is very close to coming into the mainstay, you know, depending on who you talk to. So we've actually done a lot of work in thought leadership, excuse me, papers and conversations with our customers about, you know, is this a direction you really want to go? And if so, why wait to do a big giant shift over later and have everything on premise now? Why not put yourself in a hybrid situation so that when it is ready to go mainstream and IT as a service is really something that's viable, you're in the best position to make the jump? And we have a lot of customers who put their ITSM in the cloud or some of their other things in the cloud, like their CRM in the cloud, but have some other things in their IT on premise so that they get the best of both worlds and are ready to make that jump. It all, once again, depends on their DNA and what they're the most comfortable with. And we go through a list of things that we talk about that helps kind of identify whether or not they're ready for SaaS or not.
And when when you look at these customers, and it seems to be that most of them sort of fit in between. They want to do a little of each. Are there any business benefits that you've noticed or heard about that has an advantage, where it's an advantage to stay on premise, where it's actually not beneficial to go to cloud?
That's absolutely true. I mean, we literally ask this question to SaaS or not to SaaS, right? And you know, customers that have the first thing that we see a lot of is if a customer has the attitude that if we take everything we have on premise and put it in the cloud, it's going to be exactly the way it was on premise. And anything that changes or anything that's different is completely the vendor's issue and fault or job to resurrect. I mean, if you move from on-premise to the cloud, even if the functionality is completely the same, the situation is different. There's no question about it. There isn't as much control. You don't need as many consultants running the stuff. You don't have to have it in your own data center, and there are change management processes that need to be agreed upon. So there are differences and changes, and that needs to be, you know, reconciled right up front. One of those things is change. You know, if a company is really still locked into a old motif of doing big bang changes, and you're saying, here's where we're going to put a big update that comes out, and we're going to spend 3 or 4 months building up to this big change update, and it's going to touch several systems, and we're 3 days away, we're 2 days away, we're 1 day away, now let's throw the switch, and boom, all this change comes out, might not really be a good indicator that SaaS is a way to go, where sort of the new DevOps, iterative change kind of style is the way to go. Small incremental changes that happen more often that are able to be supported in the infrastructure. Definitely a way to go to SaaS. The same thing with procurement. If their procurement processes are slow and arcane and they demand a lot of negotiation and there isn't a whole lot of governance identified, then when you make those small changes to your SaaS agreement with the vendor, seems to be that customers who aren't crisp and slick and fast and have those processes identified are at a disadvantage for the SaaS model. So there's lots of things we go through them. I already mentioned residency issues, you know, for government agencies and people with really sensitive data. So
customers learn a lot about themselves as they make this decision.
Well, it's true. You know, a lot of them just hear, you mentioned Mr. Benioff and others who are just jumping around and waving the SaaS flag and saying SaaS is where it's going. I mean, the analysts are predicting gigantic leaps into software as a service or other types of cloud computing. As soon as 2016 or even by 2020, many are saying that up to 50 or 60% of all systems will be in a cloud motif of some kind. And so people are panicking. They're thinking, oh my God, I gotta go. What can I do first? What can I do first? Well, the first thing we tell them is to decide whether or not you're really ready for this right now. And if you're not, then why force a round peg into the SaaS hole? Get yourself streamlined so that SaaS will really work for you. And we've got analysts and other people who have SaaS readiness assessments available, as well as our expertise in the matter. So something that we take seriously and really want to help our customers pick the right mix between on-premise and on-demand to be as successful as possible.
If about 50% of the ITSM market is also going to be in the cloud by, let's say 2020 or 2016, whatever number you want to use, that means that half of them are still going to be on-premise. It's not like on-premise is going away.
Absolutely. On-premise markets are still the predominant majority of customer preferences right now, using the perpetual license and the annual maintenance model. We have built a model that is what we think more flexible and gives our customers a better choice when it comes to being able to actually move between on-premise and on-demand as their business dictates. We have a product manager here named Tony Myers who is fond of saying we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future when it comes to who gets acquired or what kind of business model is changing or how markets for all these thousands of companies out there compete in. And if something happens where on-demand is a better model than on-premise or vice versa, wouldn't it be great if you had the flexibility to have the licensing and the data model support to be able to move between the two, even as granularly as your IT service management app set. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Is SaaS right for you? If it is, understand the options that you have out there. And if ITSM in the cloud is right for you, which a lot of the analysts are saying that the industry vendors have really figured it out now, and this is a good place to go if it's right for you, then find the right one that really suits your needs.
Well, it's like we're killing the myth that one size fits all. That's obviously not at all true, and so you have to find the right fit. And even if you know what solution to use, you still need the advice of someone trusted like BMC or yourself to figure out what fits you. And it doesn't even have to be us. It could be a partner or someone. You just shouldn't go at it alone just because Benioff is screaming from the mountain.
Well, obviously he's put his whole world into a cloud-based CRM solution, and it's the #1 CRM cloud-based solution in the world. Salesforce has a lot to be proud of. Dreamforce just happened this week. 135,000 strong went to it, and BMC had a big presence, and it was a great event. There's definitely value in software as a service, and now I guess they're positioning themselves as a true platform as a service. But just be true to yourself. Walk before you run. Figure out if this is the right thing for you, and then if it is, move forward. And if you really want to go there and you're not quite there, then make some changes in your infrastructure and the way you do business that will support the best chance of success in the SaaS world is kind of what we're advocating.
Thank you, Bruce. It was wonderful to have you in the zoo again. Should do this more often.
Always a pleasure.
And the rest of you, stay safe. Bye-bye.